Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're really getting into something foundational.
Yeah, we're tackling the model of human occupation, MOHO.
Exactly, MOHO. It's pretty much the bedrock for a lot of OT practice globally, isn't it?
Absolutely. And this deep dive, just so you know, is specifically geared towards occupational therapy students. We're structuring it following Dr. Jack Ruelis's presentation materials.
Right, drawing from those core MOHO chapters he highlights, we want this to be practical for you, something you can connect with clinical insights.
We're aiming beyond just definitions.
So MOHO, it's described as the most widely used, occupation-focused, evidence-based, client-centered approach. That's quite a claim.
It is, but it reflects that core shift MOHO brought about, moving away from just focusing on, say, a physical impairment.
Yeah, and there's that powerful quote that really sums it up. Through participation in therapeutic occupations, persons transform themselves into more adaptive and healthy beings.
That really captures the essence. It's from Kielhofner and Barrett. And it highlights that occupation isn't just the activity we use in therapy.
It's the engine of change itself.
Precisely. It all started with Gary Kielhofner back in '75, building on Mary Riley's work. The focus became the client's actual engagement and participation in life.
Okay, so let's get into the theoretical base, the engine room, so to speak.
Right. It really boils down to this dynamic interplay between three things: the person, their environment, and occupation, meaning occupational participation.
That PEO interaction, it's constant, always influencing each other.
And within that person piece, there are some core principles. We don't need to list them all verbatim, but a couple are really key for practice.
Like the idea that people are inherently motivated.
Yes, exactly. That humans have this innate drive for meaningful occupation. But crucially, people differ in what motivates them and how strongly.
Which immediately tells you, as a therapist, that your approach has to be super individualized. You can't assume everyone's driven by the same things.
Absolutely not. And another big one is the environment. MOHO stresses that the environment, social, physical, is a constant influence.
It's not just a backdrop, it's actively shaping participation.
Yeah.
Things like, cultural norms, social pressures, even economic factors.
Yeah, they're always at play. And that leads to maybe the most critical point of the foundation.
Which is?
The focus on the internal subjective perception. It's not just about observing what the client does, but understanding how they feel about doing it, their experience.
Okay, that subjective piece is key. So let's unpack the person factors then. Volition, habituation, and performance capacity. Let's start with volition, the motivation part. How do we get a handle on that?
Well, volition is the whole process of how people are motivated towards activities and how they choose them. It's like a triad.
A triad. Right?
Yeah, first there's personal causation. Think of it as self-efficacy. It's your internal belief about your own capacity and effectiveness.
Like the example from the source material.
Hmm.
Thinking, I am a capable student. I believe I can succeed in OT. That kind of internal self-talk.
Exactly. It's built from experience, both subjective feelings and objective results.
So if a client isn't doing their home exercises, how do we know if it's a personal causation issue, like they doubt they can do it or something else?
Good question. That's where the other parts of the triad come in. Second is values. What does the person genuinely find important or meaningful?
So maybe they believe they can do the exercises, but they don't really value them as important for their recovery.
Precisely. Or maybe they value recovery, but not that specific exercise. There's a mismatch. The third part is interests. Simply, what do they enjoy?
What provides that spark of enjoyment or satisfaction? Like finding craft activities fun during therapy.
Right. If you're not tapping into interests, you're relying purely on extrinsic motivation, which MOHO suggests isn't as sustainable for real change. You need that internal pull.
Makes sense. All right, so that's volition. Person causation, values, interests. What about habituation?
Habituation is how we organize our actions into patterns and routines. It's what makes daily life manageable without constantly deciding every little thing.
Our autopilot mode, kind of?
Sort of, yeah. It has two components. Habits, those automatic behaviors we learn through doing, like waking up at the same time every day.
Okay.
And roles. Roles give us a sort of cultural script for behavior, shaping our identity and responsibilities, like the internalized role of being a dedicated OT student.
But habits and roles can be incredibly resistant to change, right? Especially after something like an injury or illness.
Oh, definitely. Think about working with someone post-stroke. You're not just teaching them how to dress differently. You might be challenging deeply ingrained morning routines or even their role within the family.
Yeah, changing the role definition itself can be harder than teaching a motor skill sometimes.
Often it is. It involves identity.
Which brings us to the third person factor, performance capacity, the underlying abilities.
Right, the physical and mental abilities, musculoskeletal, neurological, cognitive, etc., that allow for skilled action. But here's where Avio offers a really crucial insight for practice. It stresses that we have to pay attention not just to the objective abilities, like range of motion measurements or cognitive scores, but also to the subjective experience of those abilities or impairments. How does their body feel to them? How do they perceive their limitations or the world around them?
Ah, I see. So objectively, someone might be cleared to lift 10 pounds.
Right. But subjectively, they might be overwhelmed by pain or fear of re-injury or just feeling clumsy. And that subjective experience directly impacts their volition, especially their personal causation.
It limits what they believe they can do, regardless of the objective data. That quote about keeping thoughts to oneself, not telling the boss everything, that captures that internal experience influencing action.
Exactly. Their performance is constrained by how they feel and perceive, not just by the raw physical or mental capacity.
Okay, so we've got the person factors. Now let's look outward to the environment.
Right, because MO assumes occupation always happens through the person interacting with their environment. They're inseparable.
And that environment has layers, right? Physical and social.
Yep. Physical environment includes the objects, the spaces, the building layout, even the cognitive demands of a setting.
And the social environment.
That's relationships, family, social groups, cultural expectations, norms, economic factors, all of it.
And the key takeaway for us as therapists
Is that the environment isn't neutral. It can either support and facilitate occupation, or it can create barriers.
So interventions shouldn't just target the person's skills or motivation.
Exactly. Sometimes the most effective intervention is modifying the immediate environment, physical or social, to better support the client's volition and capacity.
Makes sense. Now, MAO also talks about different levels of doing. Can we clarify that hierarchy?
Yeah, it helps to think about it in 3 dimensions. At the very top, the broadest level is occupational participation.
That's engaging in the big life areas, right? Like work, self-care, leisure, the stuff defined by your culture.
Exactly, what we generally do in life. Then, one level down, you have occupational performance.
Which is more like specific tasks.
Right. Discrete acts or units of doing, like making a cup of tea, writing an email, driving to the store. These are the tasks within those broader participation areas.
Okay. And the base level.
Occupational skills. These are the smallest observable actions used during occupational performance. MHO groups them into motor skills, process skills, and communication interaction skills.
And you mentioned process skills are important for students to watch.
Definitely. Process skills include things like sequencing steps logically, choosing the right tools, organizing your workspace, noticing and correcting errors, adapting your performance when things go wrong.
So observing those gives you real insight into someone's cognitive and executive functions in action.
Big time. They show how someone is thinking and problem solving during a task.
And when all these things, the person factors, the environment, the doing align well over time, what are the outcomes MOHO talks about?
3 key things emerge: occupational identity, occupational competence, and occupational adaptation.
Identity is that internal sense of self as someone who does things.
Yeah, your cumulative sense of who you are based on your history of participation. Occupational competence is about sustaining a pattern of participation that meets your own expectations and those of your environment.
And adaptation.
Occupational adaptation is the outcome of achieving that identity and competence. It's that successful, effective process of participating that comes from the person and environment working well together. That's ultimately the goal.
Got it. So we understand the model's components. How does change actually happen according to MOHO? What kickstarts it?
MHO is pretty clear on this. Change requires some kind of dissonance or perturbation, disruption. Something needs to shake things up a bit.
An imbalance, like things aren't working smoothly anymore.
Exactly. There needs to be a mismatch, maybe between what someone wants to do, their volition, and what they currently can do, performance capacity, or what the environment allows. That dissonance creates the motivation, the need for change.
Okay, but as therapists, we can't just go around creating chaos in people's lives to cause dissonance, right? That seems unethical.
No, absolutely not. It's more about recognizing the dissonance that already exists or that emerges naturally from their situation or condition.
Ah, okay. So the client feels the gap themselves.
Right. Our role is often to help them safely recognize and articulate that gap maybe between their values and their current habits, or their personal causation and the task demands. We facilitate that awareness.
and then guide them through the stages of change.
Precisely. MOHO describes 3 stages. First is exploration. Trying new things, discovering what you can do, becoming more aware of your capacities in the environment. It's often tentative.
Makes sense. Building awareness.
Then comes competence. This is where the client starts to really meet the demands of tasks. They're practicing skills, consolidating habits, building confidence.
Feeling more capable.
Yeah. And finally, achievement. This is when they're participating more fully, integrating new routines or ways of doing things into their lives, maintaining that sense of occupational identity and competence.
Okay, exploration, competence, achievement. Guiding clients through that requires a specific way of thinking, doesn't it? Therapeutic reasoning.
Yes, and MOHO therapeutic reasoning is distinct. It's not just standard clinical reasoning. It puts the client's perspective and the MOHO principles, volition, habituation, etc., front and center.
How so?
Well, it follows a structured process, but it's deeply collaborative. There are 6 steps they outline, which are really helpful for you as students.
Okay, let's walk through them quickly. Step 1.
Generating questions about the client, not just their diagnosis, but their volition, habits, skills, environment, their subjective experience.
Step 2.
Gathering information, but doing it with the client.
Yeah.
Using MOHO assessments, yes, but also really listening to their story, their narrative.
Collaboration is key there. Step 3.
Creating a theory-based explanation. This is where you synthesize everything you've learned into a theoretical picture of the client using MOHO concepts. You form a hypothesis about why they're experiencing the challenges they are.
So you're explaining their situation through the lens of MOHO. Step 4.
Generating goals and strategies, again, collaboratively, based on that MOHO explanation and hypothesis. The goals should reflect their values and interests.
Step 5.
Implementing and monitoring therapy. Trying out the strategies, seeing what works, adjusting based on the client's experience and performance.
And finally, step 6.
Determining outcomes. Evaluating progress, not just on objective measures, but on whether the client is achieving meaningful participation and adaptation, aligning with their goals.
That's a really clear framework. So once you have that plan, what tools or strategies does MOHO offer for the actual intervention?
There are 9 core therapeutic strategies they identify. Things like identifying, giving feedback, advising, negotiating, structuring.
Let's maybe focus on a couple that really connect back to those person factors we discussed. How about validating? Why is that considered a key strategy?
Because it directly speaks to volition, especially personal causation. When you validate a client's feelings, their struggles, their subjective experience, you're affirming their reality.
You're saying, I hear you, I understand, what you're feeling is real and makes sense.
Exactly. That builds trust, reinforces their sense of self-worth, and makes it safer for them to engage with that dissonance we talked about. It counters feelings of inadequacy.
Okay. And what about coaching? How is that specific within MO?
Coaching in MOS is very focused on supporting skill development and habit formation, directly targeting performance capacity and habituation. It's not just showing someone how to do something once.
It's more about
It's about guiding them to figure it out, providing cues, helping them internalize the process, skills planning, problem solving, adapting so they can perform more independently and consistently over time, building those new patterns.
So these strategies aren't just random techniques. They're intentionally chosen to influence specific MO components like volition or habituation.
Precisely. They're theory-driven interventions aimed at facilitating that internal transformation.
Okay, this has been a really thorough deep dive. To wrap up, MHO really emphasizes that occupation, what we do, emerges from that constant dance between the person, their internal drivers, patterns, and abilities, and their environment.
Yeah, it's a dynamic, holistic view. And its power lies in focusing on facilitating the client's own transformation, leveraging their intrinsic motivation and drive to do. It truly underpins client-centered, evidence-based practice.
So for all of you listening, especially OT students heading into practice, here's something to think about. MHO pushes us to see identity and competence as flowing from that intrinsic drive, that volition.
Oh, right.
So when you encounter a client struggling, even with what seems like a small daily task, how can you shift your thinking? How can you focus on understanding and validating their personal causation, their subjective experience, maybe even more than their objective limitations?
How does truly seeing and supporting their internal narrative, their belief in themselves, fundamentally change their path toward adaptation and recovery?
That focus on the power of intrinsic motivation and the client's own story. That's a powerful lens to bring to your work.
It really is. Well, thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the model of human occupation.
Thanks for listening.